There you go.
Hi, my name's Joyce Lugar. I was an ICU nurse back in the 70s in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And one of my patients was 36 years old. She had a blood disease called DIC, which means that you make immature platelets and produce them instead of mature platelets. So you actually clot to death and bleed to death at the same time. So we were having to give her platelets, healthy platelets, at the same time as we were giving her blood thinners so that the immature platelets wouldn't clot up. And at that point, it was a 95% fatal disease. And here she is, 36 years old, 2 little kids at home. I believe they were 5 and 3. And she had arrested, they had moved her into ICU, and they couldn't get her stabilized. And she kept arresting, and they would call a code, and they would get her back, and they would lose her, and they would call a code. And in the end, it was a 3-hour code because we kept getting her back and losing her again. Normally, we would never keep going that way. But because she was young and because we'd get her back and because it was a disease that you could recover from if you made it through this, we pulled out all the stops. We even went to the OR, got the heart-lung pump, which at that time was never used outside of the operating room because it was pretty new. And we put her on that. We tried everything. And finally, the doctor in charge said, we can't keep doing this. We don't know what state her brain is in after all of this. We have to let her go. And here, this went on for so long that we would take turns running out to the family room and giving an update to the husband. We got her back. She's gone again. Yeah, sometimes she was back long enough that he would come in and visit, and that we'd be packing up the whole crash cart, and she'd go again. So finally, we had shocked her something like 27 times, which is unheard of because, 3 or 4 shocks be kind of normal in a code. But because we kept getting her back, we kept trying. So he said, that's it, we have to let her go. So we let her go. Husband came in, and I remember he was a big, tall guy, and he got down on his knees, and he laid his head on her belly, and he said, how can you leave me with our 2 young children? And he's crying, I'm crying. So he said, I'm going to have to go and tell her parents in person because her dad has a bad heart. So he leaves to go and tell the parents. So my job now is to clean up her body and, call the morgue and do all the things that you do. Just because of where I was located in the room when I started discontinuing things, she had so many tubes and wires and hoses that we had put in every place we could put them in, and even made new places for them. And the very last thing I took off was her monitor, just because of I was working way around the bed. So for 26 minutes I had a documented straight line, and I called the morgue, and they said, if you're not in a hurry, we have another pickup. And I said, no, I'm not in a hurry. So they came up several minutes later, and they said, what room? And I pointed to the room, and they went in, and of course I had the curtain pulled. And they came back out immediately and said, what room? I said, that's the right room. And they said, no, Joyce, this lady's sitting on the side of the bed asking for a drink of water. And you got to understand that to work in the morgue, you have to have a morbid sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I'm going, no, guys, I'm not in the mood for any of your jokes today. Just take her to the morgue. And they go, no, you have to come see. She's sitting on the side of the bed. Okay. So I go in, and she looks at me, and she says, can I please have a glass of water? And I went, oh my, I need to check with your doctor. So I back up to the phone, and I said, I called emergency room where the doc had run the code. I said, that lady that you pronounced up here in ICU? And he said, yeah. I said, she's sitting on the side of the bed, wants a drink of water. He said, she was dead. I said, I know. I'm the one who cleaned her up. She was stone cold dead.
Wow.
And he said, so he comes running, because it was a teaching hospital. All of the minions that follow behind the attendings are running. But he ran in so fast. I remember the lab coat. His tails on his lab coat were flapping. And all these people behind him. And then because we had called so many other people to help with the code, they soon got word that this lady was alive again, and they started arriving with their minions. And like it was a good size ICU room, but it was full.
Wow.
And they said, when I had taken her monitor off, finally when I did, I took off the 4x4s that we put on, saline 4x4s is what they used back then for defibrillating. And when I removed them, all the skin came with it. And I thought, oh my God, we should have made them wet again. And so there's a perfect size of the 4x4 and the defibrillator paddles burned right through her skin, right down to the fatty layer. And I thought, oh. So I put on clean dressings, put on a clean gown and everything, because I wasn't sure, was the husband going to come back with the parents or what. So I was cleaning her up when he didn't come back, so we were sending her to the morgue. So sorry for that little version there. So they said to me, now all the doctors are there, we'll get her back on the monitor, get her back on the monitor. So I had to get new little tabs to stick on. And the one 4x4, because of where you position them when you're defibrillating, was in my way of where I needed to put on the new tab. So I removed the clean 4x4 I had just put on, and the skin was healed. Completely perfect skin. And I grabbed her Johnny shirt, and I'm in a room, there's a lot of people in there, and I'm pulling it up, and I'm looking, oh my God, and she's trying to push it down. And I'm going, but you were burned, and like, I'm like freaking out. So the doctors are, get lab up here, get x-ray up here, we're doing all this test. All evidence of her blood disease was gone. Everything was perfect immediately. Everything was fine. So I thought, the husband, I got to stop him from telling the dad. No, it was too late. So I get a hold of him, and the dad answered the phone. And so I asked for the husband, and he comes on, and I said, you need to come back to the hospital. Your wife is, and what do you say? Yeah. Your wife is alive. And he said, if this is some kind of a cruel joke. And I said, no, sir, there's been a miracle. Like, there's no medical term for what happened. And he says, I said, bring her parents. And he said, are you sure? I said, yes, bring her parents. So I go back in the room, and she's sitting there crying. And the doctors are all looking at lab work and x-rays. Nobody's talking to her. And I sort of leaned against the edge of the bed right next to her, and I said, you do know you were dead, weren't you? And she said, yes. So why are you crying? I would have thought you'd be happy to be back. And she said, I didn't want to come back. It was so wonderful. And I met Jesus. I said, you met Jesus? I said, what does he look like? What do you even ask, right? She said, well, if you could see love, that's what he looks like. He's made out of light. So I said, but what about the burns? Like, you had those burns, and then they're gone. And she said, oh yeah, he did that for you. And I thought, like, pretty small piece of this puzzle, and I just couldn't digest that. Why would he do it for me? How, but I was the only one that saw the burn and then saw the heal. So parents arrived. Of course, everybody's all excited. They moved her out of ICU the next day down the hall. I had a couple days off. I went to see her once, and then she was discharged home to her family and a good life. And I thought, whatever happened to her? Why did she? Lots of people have little kids at home that die. Why was she told, you must go home and raise your children? That's what Jesus told her. So I just tucked that one away, and I thought, okay, why did I get to see that? What does that mean to me? And it became one of many amazing things that I got to see as an ICU nurse. So now I'm working on a book. Cool.
Good. That's lovely, Joyce.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's wonderful.